Greetings, cult members, loyal subscribers, and casual viewers alike. Before you ask, this look is based on the Flatwoods Monster. It's in another book that I'm reading for the cult members only, and it's a monster that is an alien, and it also looks like half human, half dragon, and it's from 1952. That was the inspiration for the look. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the Session 6 transcripts. Now, after reviewing a little bit of how Doe was reading or speaking about these Session 6 tapes, considering how Doe was speaking on some of those Session tapes, it does give me some confidence to continue reading with the same theatrics. So let's go ahead and get started. Well, there you are again. This is the 6th session in our series, and we're trying something a little different. We felt like we got an instruction to just take a short break after our last session and come right back and continue, because that last session seemed to go in about 30 seconds. When one of our crew went over with the card to hold up 10 seconds, I knew that their clock was wrong, that we certainly hadn't gone through an hour that quickly. But I hope that we're right, that we do have the instruction to proceed, and so we're going to dive right in and pick up where we left off. Now, I still wonder, from what Doe explained in a previous session tape, I'm still not exactly sure what the difference is between now we need to ask for instruction versus we don't need to ask for instruction. One example that Doe gave, it didn't really illuminate it for me, and I'm not sure about you guys. And the example was that we don't ask, may I take another bite of the cereal, but we do ask, is this cereal the right thing that I should be eating? So where exactly is the line? You know what I'm saying? Is it that they're supposed to do another session? Why do they have to ask if they should do another session? I don't know, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe it does for you. Please let me know in the comment section below. In the few minutes that we did break, a couple of things occurred to me as I thought back on what we discussed towards the end of that session, and I want to dive back into a couple of aspects of our last discussion. One is this. We talked about how the door has to be open only a brief time. I didn't quite finish the point that if you really play it out in your imagination, that if there was an organization out there saying, move out of your world, leave everything, and some literally and physically did that, when you hear more about the particulars of what overcoming is, you could see that if it ever caught on, it would have a significant effect on the structure of things. Boy, isn't there a better way he could have said that? So again, too bad in that short break between session 5 and session 6, Doe didn't think to write a script this time either. I don't know why the Kingdom of Heaven isn't giving him that instruction. But basically, it's just, if you follow our instruction to leave everything behind, that's going to have some significant effect on the world. That's all it's really saying. And it would certainly be a threat and be detrimental to the system that Satan, or Lucifer, has engaged for society at this point in an age. Let's take, for example, in the churches that began in the New Testament, particularly in the Pauline letters. That is, those churches continued to stay in the same town to teach the truth, the facts. The truth had to begin to be watered down in order for them to survive. Otherwise, every last follower in every little church would have disappeared. And in order to protect our endeavor of change in the same way, in 75 we had to disappear in order to be isolated. In other words, we had to be separated out or lifted out in order to be free to do what we had to do. And the same thing would happen if you continue to take an interest in this. And the further we go, if it speaks to you, then you would recognize that, goodness, I'm going to be shortly, literally, physically dropping out of the world. Another point that I mentioned briefly was the martyrdom that occurred 2,000 years ago. I said that it certainly isn't necessary as an aspect of overcoming, even though the possibility exists, but I feel I must mention that religions that elevate such things as martyrdom are certainly against our Father's kingdom. Our hope is that if this aspect of the harvest is successful, we will be able to do it without too much interference. But if interference is needed in order to bring us more quickly to where we have to become, in order to be survivable in the Kingdom of Heaven, well, then that's the whole issue that counts. Nothing can happen to us, even though from a human point of view, certainly things can happen to us. They could hurt us, they could throw us in jail, they could kill someone's vehicle. I mean, if it got that violent. Hopefully the culture we live in here at the end of the age is a little bit more civilized than that, and we'll put it to the test, I'm sure. The freedom of speech and the freedom of religion and the freedom to worship God as you choose. It will be put to the test again, no matter how short a time the door is open. We're quite aware that that test will be out there again. So one thing that I've noticed that has been a little bit disappointing about learning more about the Heaven's Gate theology is it really just raises yet another sect of Christianity. And I'm sure that many of you, and I know that has been the case for me, I'm sure that you've also heard things about Christians saying they're ready to be martyred for Christ. I definitely remember during the Columbine shootings, there was this myth that went around that for some reason the churches were telling the congregation, especially in the youth group, they were telling them that the school shooters were directly targeting Christians, that they were basically asking, are you Christian? Do you believe in Jesus Christ? And if you said yes, then they pulled the trigger. Okay. And yeah, it turns out that wasn't true, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't spoken about as if it was true. I don't know, Christians are always just ready to die. And that's one thing that I found kind of weird to be told as an atheist, that because you're an atheist, there's no point to your life. And for me, back when I was Christian, I really didn't think there was a point to our lives. After all, God knows the choices we're going to make, so why not just create people that are already in heaven and create people that are already in hell? And then if he really doesn't want people to go to hell, just create people that are already in heaven. The end. In church, we were always reminded that life is a blip in the eye of eternity. So I thought, well, then what's the point? I want to die now, you know? So that's definitely what it seems like. And I think having the Hale-Bopp comet to sort of use as an excuse, that's definitely a good excuse for a type of Christian that believes they can get to the kingdom of heaven in that manner. All right, on to the question that was asked before we closed out the last hour. Is overcoming a moral issue, or is it a behavioral difference? We talked about how it's not particularly a moral issue, even though some of the things might be more right than other things because they're less harmful. And in a sense, anything that is behavior not becoming our Father's household is immoral. It's wrong. But in another sense, it's simply not an acceptable way of life. The lifestyle in the kingdom of heaven has no place for it. It does not exist. Therefore, if it does not exist, then it needs to be fluffed off, or it needs to be overcome. It needs to be risen above. Now, I could make a joke about fluffers, but I won't. Let's say that in the kingdom of heaven, since babies do not come in through woman's womb because they, the members in our Father's kingdom, are neither male nor female, and they seem to be all about the same age, then to still have a mindset at reproductive activity or sexuality, certainly, or even connecting with the family in that way, that it is inappropriate behavior. Therefore, in that sense, it's wrong if you are a potential student, if you are in a position in your growth, if you've come to the point of wanting to overcome the world, which I feel that you're still with us in a positive way, then you more likely have come. And you're probably standing outside that vehicle right now having a hard time with this because everything seemed to be going pretty well until I heard this. Now I can't sleep at night. I'm being shattered. And you're probably more indulgent in everything than you ever were before because you just don't know what's going on. And if that's the case, I'm afraid the earmarks might be there, that you might be marked, so to speak, by our Father's kingdom to be a possible recipient of this. But just because our Father's kingdom gives you that gift doesn't ensure it. You still have to pursue it. You have to exert the labor. You have to survive. You have to develop the muscle. You have to be the one to make the choice to continue asking and to move forward step by step. And nearly every lesson in the lesson plan comes with a difficult hurdle to make, a moment of unpleasantness, at least a moment. Nearly every lesson, not all, but many do. Okay, who's next? Well, in discussing the particulars of overcoming, do you want to start with separateness? Yes, I'd like to go back to separateness. You know, in a previous session, we talked about how death is synonymous with misinformation. Truth is life. If you really went to the root meaning of the Hebrew word death, it would be separation from God. Let me check that. Let's see what we got. So it looks like the idea of death in Hebrew being a separation from God. This is seen This is an argument that is frequently made, I suppose, based off of what I was just reading. But looking at just some of the words that are used in the Bible, the same word for death in the Old Testament is also used to refer to animals dying. And I don't think anybody would think about animals dying as animals are going through a separation from God or that they're going to hell or anything like that. So it may be inappropriate to interpret it that way. It's maybe more of a theological concept as opposed to a literary or etymological concept. The actual realistic definition of the term, as it was intended when the language was created by our Father's kingdom, and as members of our Father's kingdom related to those human beings who use the Hebrew language. Death meant separation. So it doesn't, I think what was the word that I just saw? Meveth. And again, that's used to refer to animals as well. And separation is, of course, synonymous with overcoming the world. I separate from the world. What we're trying to overcome is separation from our Father's kingdom. We have been separate. Don't forget, what is it that's coming to life here? It's the soul. Where did the soul come from? Planet Earth? No. The soul was created by our Heavenly Father, created by the kingdom of God. It was nurtured by Him. It came only from Him. So, in that sense, every soul that finds its place in His household is returning home like E.T., wanting to go home. Wow. I mean, there's a sense of wanting to make this more of accessible Christianity, to make it seem less UFO craze, alien nonsense, right? And to really look at it as, okay, yeah, I mean, they're aliens in the sense that they're in space and they're not human like we are, but really it's like the devil and angels and demons and of course God and Jesus. So those beings that we would consider to be aliens, quote unquote, those are actually celestial beings. And they want to make it seem less like it's worshiping aliens, right? Just these literal extraterrestrial biological entities. And that's fine. You know, you kind of go with them and understand, all right, that's part of the theology, that's the belief. They want to make it seem less fantastical or silly. And then they throw in this, like E.T. wanting to go home. You know, they work so hard to try to remove it from a crazy space alien worshipping cult, and then they throw this in, like E.T. wanting to go home. Just say that the soul wants to go back to its origin. I mean, that's a totally Christian idea, isn't it? Souls exist and are imbued because of God. They come from heaven and they want to return to heaven. Just go with that. Why do we have to talk about E.T. wanting to go home? If that soul begins to awaken, it knows, I'm going home. Even though I don't remember anything about home, it's been so long and I've been so tiny, so insignificant, and now I'm going to know what home is like, even though I've been separated. How many thousands of years have I been separated? More than likely, those of you who would choose to separate at this time and let us assist you in your birth, in your going through this canal to the other side, the pangs that you would experience would be unequal to anything that you've ever experienced before. And you can realistically know that. This sounds like we're trying to set you up to feel good about yourself, but that's really not the case. You came from the kingdom of heaven to do this. You know, I brought up the military in the previous session, and I'm kind of reminded of it again. This idea that in the Marine Corps recruiting office, it says there's these posters that says nobody promised you a rose garden, and it's some drill instructor screaming in the face of recruits, and you get kind of reminded of it a little bit, you know, in training as well. You know, nobody expected a rose garden, and you're reminded of it again, that the Marine Corps is what you make of it. So if you're having a bad time in the Marine Corps, it's basically your fault. You know, the Marine Corps is not good or bad, it's just whatever you make of it. So stop sucking. Sucks to suck kind of thing, right? And I wonder if that's sort of the mentality here too. This idea that we're preparing you to do something that's really difficult, and this appeals to people who are either interested in doing something difficult or who already believe that they're going through something difficult, so they may as well get something good out of it. I mean, one thing that I always tell my tattoo artists when I get a new tattoo is that occasionally I will have to ask them to stop, and I may start to twitch, so I'll just warn them about that should that happen. And Some people will ask, well, is it painful? And I say, well, yeah, but I'm always in pain. So I may as well make it worth something. If I'm going to be in pain anyway, I may as well have some art on my body, right? If I'm going to be in pain anyway, may as well separate from my vehicle and reach the kingdom of heaven. You have been saved. You've been set aside in our Father's kingdom. You've also got a briefing before you left on what you might expect. You got some assistance in picking out a vehicle that you could associate with to some degree, even from inception or conception. And now you have to take over that vehicle, dominate it. The soul has to come to life. The flesh has to become, in a sense, dead. Have no voice. Just be a living mechanism that will permit you to do what you want to do within the bounds of a lesson ground. So, separation from our Father is the number one, top of the list type thing of overcoming. We're trying to destroy separation. We're trying to get back to our Creator, get back to our only real Father. Now, our Father's kingdom, in this particular age, did associate with the Jews and later those who followed Jesus, like we talked about before. Remember way back in the early parts of the age when our Father's kingdom even hovered over the camp in a spacecraft or a cloud and related to them and gave them instructions to Moses and to the priests. And the Israelites saw fire by night and they saw a cloud by day. It would move and it would follow them where they would go, and they would have a place where they could go and sit and concentrate on the lessons they were receiving. So, in a sense, our Father's kingdom actually had a member from that kingdom in a vehicle from that kingdom, nurturing them, taking them through certain lessons. The interesting thing is I can absolutely see where this idea about space aliens, spacecrafts, etc., how this would really match up with the wandering through the desert for the 40 years, right? And I think that they explained exactly how. What's interesting is I can't, now, like, I haven't memorized every episode of Ancient Aliens, but I can't remember guys like Eric Von Daniken or Giorgio Tsoukalos talking about this. I remember them talking a lot about Ezekiel's wheel, but about, the manna from heaven and everything, I don't know. And I'm trying to remember it, and I don't know if I'm forming a memory that doesn't exist or if I'm actually remembering something, so maybe somebody can post that in the comment section, or I can just rewatch Ancient Aliens. So, don't have to twist my arm about it. But believe it or not, the human beings that our Heavenly Father's kingdom was associating with very quickly lost sight of the value of that closeness and the importance of that closeness and wanted their own way. I want this to eat. Well, I'm tired of eating this. I want to eat that. I need to do this. And so pretty soon the member says, well, I can't tell you what to do. You have to make choices. You're no good to our Father's kingdom if I force you to do something. I can lay before you what would be best for you, but then you have to make the choice. And even if you insist on compromising it, then I'll help you even pick up your compromise in the least harmful way to you. And so that whole business from Egypt and into the promised land and all that was just making one compromise after another for the sake of the ones who continued to turn away from the will of the member of our Father's kingdom that was seeing them through that process. Let's go to our next aspect, okay? You touched on this, but what about independence, doing what you want to do when you want to do it? Well, I don't feel that I've really touched on it because, boy, that is a booger. If there ever is an influence that's certainly high up in the hard to overcome area, that's one that's difficult for many individuals. Lucifer certainly knows how to get a grasp in that one, because that's one of his strong points. That's one he likes to keep you thinking you are happy in, and are doing what you want to do when you want to do it. When you start in the overcoming process, you don't have that freedom. You have the freedom to walk out the door anytime you want to, but when someone is assigned the task of taking you through the birth canal from the human kingdom into our Father's kingdom, it's not like the one who took the tribes from Egypt into Israel, making compromises because they kept insisting upon it. It's a different timetable, and the member from our Father's kingdom, who is a representative associating with you in that transition, isn't willing to compromise that much, and does not get instruction to compromise that much. They compromise a little, and then they tighten the belt again, because the object is, we have a short time to get a long distance. And in order to take advantage of the short time, then it does require a very accelerated forward motion. And that accelerated forward motion does not leave the door open to compromise. This is interesting because this really reminds me of questions I had back as a Christian. These ideas that, well, how could Moses and Abraham and stuff, they never had a chance to believe in Jesus. And if Jesus is the only way, the way, the truth, and the life, no one gets to heaven but through me, and they never had a chance to get to heaven through Jesus, are they in heaven? And so the answer is always yes. And things were a little different back then, even though God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He never changes, but somehow he did change. And something scapegoat, something animal sacrifice, and that just sort of absolves everybody's sins. But now we have Jesus, and things are a little bit different. You can't just sin and then sacrifice an animal. You have to believe in Jesus and then try really hard not to sin anymore. And I don't know, that's what I'm reminded of here. Oh yeah, back in the day, compromise. Not a big deal, but now no compromise at all whatsoever. Why? Because the age, it's ending. So no compromises now. That's a really good way to get people to stick to what you're saying and not really think about what they're doing. I can remember that in the Wyoming campground that I referred to, after those 9 months of running around holding meetings, all of a sudden T and I had to start saying, we can't get anywhere. We can't have our little meetings. We can't have our sessions if we're just so disorganized that this bunch is running off to the laundromat at this hour and that bunch is running off to the grocery store at that hour and this one is doing that. Oh wow. That's what they consider disorganized and not being able to do anything, is that people were running errands. That was just unacceptable. You couldn't go to the grocery store and you couldn't go to the laundromat. Nope. You have to do everything at the same time. That is, we know a lot and we know a little, right? We know a lot about some things. We know a little about other things about the Heaven's Gate theology. This is really where it's telling us at this moment, this is when we decided, oh yeah, we have to remove their sense of freedom and freedom of movement. So we had to have a structure for the sake of getting somewhere and having some instruction and making a laboratory classroom out of it, and changing our vernacular, and changing our habits, and changing our ways. And that structure then immediately became an infringement on doing what I want to do when I want to do it. And so the individual that was still dealing a lot with, I need that pizza. We haven't had pizza for 2 weeks, or we haven't had pizza for 3 months, and we really haven't been to the picture show, or when do we go to the picture show? It's not the one that I want to see. And so the individual that was still dealing with a lot with, I need that pizza. We haven't had pizza for 2 weeks, or we haven't had pizza for 3 months, and we haven't been to the picture show, or when we do go to the picture show, it's not the one that I really wanted to see, or I really feel like I need so much of this time to consume, or so much of that, and I don't like okra, or whatever it is I found on the menu yesterday. I feel like they must have been targeting a very specific individual because, just randomly chose okra? I don't think so. To a large degree, the path of overcoming is one of liberating you from structure. And in a sense, at this point, you could kind of compare overcoming this world to a preparation program for God's astronaut program. I really don't like how this is being phrased. I really hope it's not going to, because because the kingdom is setting the structure, you are now liberated from having to create your own schedule. So in following this structure without freedom, you are now given the freedom to follow the kingdom of heaven fully, because now all of the normal day-to-day scheduling, errands, etc., that's all taken care of for you. So really, we're giving you freedom by taking away your freedom. I really hope that's not where this is going. If we're going to a place where you can't just run off when you want to run off, have what you want to have, and do what you want to do, then you need to know that you have control. You don't need to have your pizza when you want it. You don't need to cat around for a couple of hours at night and run your car up and down Main Street. You don't need to do this or that. You've grown up to the point where your only concern is being a crew member, being part of a crew. And whatever the crew is assigned to, whatever the crew wants to do, insignificant or significant, you are crew-minded. Instructions are given to the crew, and you as a crew member are crew-minded. So one of the major difficulties that happens is this difficulty of getting rid of what I want to do when I want to do it. Don't forget, it isn't really what you want to do when you want to do it. Why does this sound so much like the Marine Corps? Next up is the Marine Corps cult. This brings up an interesting point. In a sense, even though we're the little guy who has lost control of the option button, and because we all have free will as to what we listen to and what we don't listen to, in a sense, we're mediums. We're all mediums. I don't mean like mediums in the same sense of a spiritualist church or the New Age mediums, but I'm not condemning them. They're at levels of pursuit of trying to improve their knowledge. But in a sense, we are mediums. What's funny is that when we are in the world, since there are so many discarnates out there, so many individuals outside of bodies, they use our body to do what they want to do. And a lot of times you've seen illustrations of that in a person. Psychologists and psychiatrists have written books about it, and there have been television shows about it. Multiple personalities. Even to the degree that if a vehicle permits it, and if the soul is supposed to be more strongly identifying with that vehicle permits it, those individuals who are in the discarnate condition will even come in and identify their name, and they'll be, wow, all these multiple personalities. Okay, what? Even to the degree that if a vehicle permits it, so the body permits it, and the soul that's supposed to be strongly identifying with that vehicle permits it. So the soul that's like tied to the body. So the vehicle is like cool, the soul is like cool. Demons can show up and they'll be, wow, all these multiple personalities. That's what the demon's gonna say when the demon, doesn't a demon know how the bodies work? Why would it be like, wow, multiple personalities? Or are they the psychologists and psychiatrists? So the body has a name that's different from the vehicle. And of course, that's different from the demon. And that's what a psychologist will say. Yes, multiple personalities. Okay. When Jesus says, when your eye is single, your whole body is full of light. And that means when there's only one soul in there, there's only one pillowcase, it's only you. So it wasn't really you who liked to run and do when you wanted to do it. It was you permitting others to use you to run when they wanted you to run and indulge in what they wanted you to indulge in, because they could only get feeling and satisfaction from participating in your vehicle and, in a sense, cohabitating in your vehicle with you in order to get their desire taken care of. Now, that's interesting because I thought that the only minds that were allowed into the soul were Lucifer or God. But I guess if Lucifer allows demons, and I guess God would be allowing angels or these other souls that aren't God as the mind to be in the soul. I guess, yeah, I can see where they're trying to explain it. So because the soul can contain or should be containing a mind, and whether it's more the mind of God or more the mind of Lucifer, that just depends. Those are the things that your soul kind of influences the vehicle to do. That's what I'm understanding. And sometimes when you get these urges to go do things that are sinful or otherwise just not helpful to you, that's because a demon has gotten into your body, and that particular demon wants to partake in this thing, whether it be eating pizza, watching a movie, or something else. But it can't do it without a physical body. So it gets into your physical body and makes you go eat the pizza. But I thought that without a physical body, without a vehicle, you also don't have these desires, right? Weren't we just talking about there's no male or female, there's just souls, there's just beings that are with God? And all of these desires to do a lot of things come from our physical body. Like our physical body needs to sleep. It's not that our soul needs to sleep. Our physical body needs to eat. It's not that our soul needs to eat. So why would a discarnate soul have a bunch of body desires if it doesn't have a body? And that's like the benefit of not having a body, is that you don't have all these bodily desires. Now you could have desires to go against God or to try to overtake God, like Lucifer, and then you're separated from the kingdom of heaven. But beyond that, why would you have all these physical desires if you're not in a physical body? I thought that was kind of the point. What do you guys think? So in that sense, we're mediums. Our desire is to become vessels. Another word, same thing, for the mind of our Father's kingdom, but certainly not in the sense that humans interpret mediumship. Okay, again, just use a different word then. The idea is that, well, we're mediums, but not like the mediums you've heard about. We're totally different definition, but I'm not going to come up with a different word. Just use a different word. Why are we doing this? Even though we would like to be able to kind of get in some unconscious or trance state and say to our older member, just use us, I'll disappear, you use us. He says, no, that's ridiculous. We're not that stupid. Come on now. If you ask me, I'll feed you information. If you're asking the right thing and it's information that I have instruction to feed you, then I'll give it to you. And in that sense, we're expected to grow up a little bit and understand how that mechanism of information works. What's our next question? Well, in overcoming independence, what about needing recognition or attention? Okay. In a sense, this wanting to do what I want to do when I want to do it is a kind of independence. We said separateness is kind of a top of the list, and we'll make independence maybe somewhere close to the top of the list of something that needs to be overcome. And you said independence, is it also like needing recognition or ego? Ego, that's good. What do you mean that's good? Didn't you write didn't you know what the questions were in advance? I mean, that's the whole point of writing the questions in advance, is so you have a loose idea of where you want to go. And he's like, oh, wow, what a good point. So what, you're saying you made a good point? So that's kind of egotistical. I mean, I don't know. I didn't really bring it up in past times when Doe did this. When somebody would ask a question, he's like, oh my gosh, that's such a great question. Like, aren't you the one either writing the questions or at least helping to come up with the questions? Why are you saying, oh, good question, yes. Ego, that's good. You wrote it, or you helped write it, or whatever. You knew this was there. It's bizarre. Independence, ego. I'll say that, believe it or not, even that, for the most part, is not you, but it's someone from the other side, a discarnate, who has not overcome wanting humanness. Or it could be you because you're still listening to that. Okay, so what is it? So is it a demon or is it you? You know, we're getting all this information in the previous couple paragraphs about, well, this is how it works and this is why this happens, and when you get these desires, this is where they come from. And then just 2 seconds later, well, yeah, this is where they come from, but maybe not. You know, and this is the best we got. Okay. I mean, this is giving me whiplash. A lot of times we listen to the influences that we're still into. So we can't really blame the influence, because anytime we listen to an influence, then we obviously haven't overcome it ourselves, or we wouldn't be listening to the influence, would we? Okay, so it's you doing it. What? Like, if you have a genetic predisposition for alcoholism, and then you're at a party and you start drinking, and that unlocks your genetic predisposition, so now you're an alcoholic. You didn't need the demon to show up and cohabitate with your body and say, hey, you know what I really miss? Gin and tonic. And you're like, yep, that's it, the influence. No, you're influencing yourself. That's what he was explaining this whole time, that the vehicle has these desires. The vehicle this, the vehicle this, the vehicle. You got to separate the vehicle, control the vehicle. You don't want the vehicle to do all the things it wants to do because it derives pleasure. It gets the dopamine. Now suddenly we're told, but also like the demon comes inside. Also, sometimes not. Again, a script. A script. So, independence or ego, if I need attention, if I need recognition, if I want to amount to something, then these are qualities that were taken from the human kingdom, even into our Father's kingdom, long time ago, by someone called Lucifer. He still couldn't get his eye off himself, wanting to be somebody, being impatient with his assigned tasks, being a member of a crew, his having to wait for instruction to come down. And he wanted to be somebody. He wanted to develop. And then that meant that he didn't trust in the one who was taking him through development. A lot of overcoming is a matter of patience, a matter of waiting. I mean, we spend a lot of time waiting, learning to overcome being disturbed by waiting or threatened by waiting. But independence is certainly synonymous with separateness. It's certainly synonymous with ego, selfishness, wanting attention, wanting to have identity, wanting to have its own flock, wanting to have its own corporation. So yes, if that's something you've had to deal with, that you have not overcome, and most have to deal with it to a degree when they are in the human kingdom, then this is another on our list of helping you understand some of what you're up against if you still need that recognition, or if you still need that independence, that separateness. I mean, that's a great thing to tell people if you want them to work for free, isn't it? What's next on our list? Well, what about rebelliousness? I'm afraid that I would pretty much treat rebelliousness as just a side symptom of independence. Rebelliousness is just the next step of independence. I mean, I would agree with that. It says, I wanted to do it, and you didn't let me do it, so I'm gonna rebel. And unfortunately, then, you find yourself on the threshold of the next level saying to you, I can't force you to do it. This isn't the name of the game of forcing someone to do it. I can't make you do it. You have to make me, re-help you, re-help you. Wow. I'm not sure if this is like a reference to some pop culture thing at this time. If not, this sounds kind of similar to the way that some people speak when they are on like a very low calorie diet, like a very restrictive diet. They can get really repetitive, or they kind of lose what they're trying to say. Now, I think he possibly did this to make an impact, make you, help you, re-help you, make me, all this stuff, right? It's repetitive, but I don't think it really serves a purpose. This sounds like something that you kind of come up with when you're just really calorie deprived. The initiation has to come on the part of the seeker, repeatedly. Interesting. Repeating repeatedly. If the thirst is weak, boy, are we in trouble. If the desire to change is weak, are we in trouble, because the teachers don't get anywhere. When they see us going slow and they try to impose it upon us, it doesn't just move. The movement forward occurs in direct proportion to the thirst of the individual, the desire for change, the desire of speed in that change, the muscle exerted to control that change, to rise out of that desire and discard it and look for something better and be ready for it. And say, here I am, I'm ready for the next step and the next instruction. Of course, you'd be surprised. Those old tests keep coming back. The next level sends them back to us to be sure that we've really licked them and to give us another little chance to prove that we have. We can re-examine them. Sometimes they come back even stronger. We thought, wow, I thought I'd gotten past that one. I didn't have to deal with that anymore. Then some night, in the middle of the night, or in total surprise, you have something return that you thought you had really overcome, and it comes in as such a shock. Pretty soon you get wise, and you know that it's going to return, and you're prepared for it, but you don't think about it. If you fear it and you think about it, you're inviting it. Oh, this is also similar to a lot of those evangelicals. If you have a thought that's not of God, then it's of the devil, therefore you're letting the devil in. Interesting. So you have to block it. It doesn't exist. Don't even acknowledge it. It isn't there. And when it comes and you're surprised, you deal with it. You get rid of it. And then you learn to be quicker in dealing with it. Quicker and quicker and quicker. At first, you might make the mistake of hearing its argument. Then soon you'll hear less of its argument and less of its argument. And as you progress, you even begin to smell it before you can even identify its argument, and you put up a block for it. You put up a big old Yale lock on that door before it even gets to the door, because you could smell that particular quality or characteristic returning that you had once listened to. This sounds again really similar to other Christian sects. This idea of thought-stopping techniques, this idea of not at all even thinking about the sin. Don't test yourself. Don't put yourself in a position where you could be tested. Run in the other direction from sin, whether that be physically or metaphorically. That really sounds like this. What's next on our list? It occurred to me when you were talking about independence. Will our viewers be left feeling a void if they get rid of their independent thinking? No. I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, that's good. There he goes again. Doe, you knew about these questions. When you run around in the human world, all of these discarnates that are using you to be their medium, and they're having their own pleasures through you, are also really making a place for you in the world. I mean, they give you identity. They give you success and careers. For example, it does not mean that if a spirit is in a vehicle, and that spirit very quickly is a child prodigy at the piano, that spirit was necessarily a good pianist in that lifetime. That spirit may have just had a little bit of piano experience in a previous lifetime. And then the spirit of a real proficient pianist says, I found a vehicle, or body, that has enough proficiency that I think I can hop into, and boy, we can go. So really, okay, so a child that's really good at playing the piano is really being infested by a demon who, in their previous incarnate life, was just okay at playing the piano, and they just want to be a really good pianist come hell or high water in this body or the next. And then does that vehicle and that spirit get excited? Because here comes a pianist, discarnate, in, and this person has developed into just an astounding success as a pianist. Actually, any of those spirits can take possession if they want to. A lot of them don't really want to take possession. They just want to use a vehicle. Because once you take possession, then you're responsible for it. And you've also endured running everybody else off, all these other cohabitating influences that were trying to utilize that soul. So what everything that you do is a result of just different demons kind of taking the controls. So when I cook dinner, that's one demon that's like, oh, I liked cooking when I was alive in a human body, so we're gonna cook. And then when I sit down to read, that's another demon taking over that liked to read, and they still like to read. When I lift weights, okay, that's another one. The demon was a bodybuilder in a previous life, and they're just trying, like, what, really? But again, also, these are your thoughts as a person. But that independence thing, like I said, wasn't really independence. It was these other influences, these other discarnates, using you to accomplish what they want to accomplish. Oh, I see where this is going. So it's not really you that's getting recognition, it's the demon. So isn't it better if you give yourself over to the kingdom of heaven? So to answer the question, as you run those guys off and you begin to lose your talents, you begin to lose your identity. Everyone arrives at a condition where they say, I just don't know who I am anymore. I've just lost everything. And even though that can seem traumatic to them, it's the best place they can find themselves. Because at that point, they can turn right around and say, well, I must be succeeding in this task of overcoming. Yep, there it is. What do I want to be? I want to be putty. I want to be putty in the hands of my Heavenly Father's kingdom. That's what I said I craved. Now here I'm put to the test. Do I crave that? Do I care about I? Or do I only want to be a servant? Do I even want to be a servant? Or do I just want to be any servant? Do I want to be available? Am I satisfied with being available and not interrupting, not causing problems, but being someone who can contribute? Maybe if all I can contribute is to mix the batter for the cake, then can I do it without causing problems with the other crew members? Can I do it in a right relationship with them? Or do I want to shine somehow? All this effort that's been made by metaphysicians and certain new age groups to have life readings and to try to help people identify with their past, I'm afraid, does more harm than it does good. It doesn't do any harm to know that you've more than likely had a past, and it might have been a lengthy one. But if I connect with that past and try to bring it into realism, I can also turn on old buttons that you worked hard to turn off. I can remind you of your alcoholism, or I can bring you back into place, or I can remind you of whatever it was that you worked so hard to overcome. And knowing that past is of no significance. There's only one past that is of significance to you, and that is your past relationship with your Heavenly Father and His relationship with this kingdom, His relationship with His representatives, your relationship with His representatives, His kingdom, anyone else that was associated with His kingdom that you have come into contact with. That's the only past that is of any significance to you. Again, sounds a lot like any other Christian. Now, they are talking about the idea of past lives. Most Christians don't have this idea, but really they're saying the only thing that matters is your relationship with God. That's it. How can you serve His kingdom? How can you please God? I believe that T and I can safely say that we cannot remember, nor do I expect that we will remember when we're back in the activity of our Father's kingdom, that we will see a posting of a piano concert anywhere, or that we'll see a posting of an NFL football game, or of the Presbyterians, or of any other profession that I could think that exists in this kingdom level that does not exist in that one. Now, I'm not condemning those things. They were lesson grounds. They were stepping stones. They were places to get into, learn from, and get out of, and rise above, to see through, to get new values, and see that they weren't as valuable as you thought they were. A real irony here is that from our Father's point of view, the most intelligent, or what humans would call the most intelligent people, and the most schooled people, and the most scholarly people are most usually from our Father's point of view the most ignorant. Frequently, the person who has no schooling at all, who might at this moment be a street person or a wino or live in the sticks in the Appalachian Mountains. But they sit out on that little mountain and talk to their God all the time, and they wonder why it is that they feel guilty about some of the conduct that goes on in their life and in their household. And sometimes the most simple people that deal with the most simple problems get closer. And they usually are simple people dealing with simple problems also because of their relationship with their Father. Don't forget the growth pattern is, when I ask, he usually presents me with something that I could see as a problem or I can see as positive and move forward from that. Again, very typical Christian concept here that, oh, you think you're so wise, wise people are fools in the eyes of God, that sort of thing. If you think we've covered independence for the moment, shall we move on to overcoming sensuality? I'm sure we'll come back to independence, but sensuality is such a big, big picture, and it is so separate from our Father's kingdom. It is so inappropriate for our Father's kingdom because, as we've discussed, the reproductive system is not existent in our Father's kingdom. Of course, sensuality has many aspects. If you consider all of the senses, the emotions, the moods, the needing of affection, the needing of attention, all of those are aspects of sensuality. And so is the indulgence in stimulants and needing your coffee or needing your alcohol or needing your booze. What? Alcohol or booze, okay? Or whatever it is that you like to hide in. Do you guys hide in your coffee? But let's narrow down sensuality for a few minutes to sexuality, because it's certainly as major an issue for humans, if not the area, that Satan works the hardest to keep you addicted to. I don't know of any human that isn't addicted to sensuality and sexuality. Of course, if they weren't, they wouldn't be a human. So I'm pretty safe in saying that. Yeah, sorry for any of you asexual people out there. You don't exist in this theology. Now, I must, in all fairness, question what I just said, because there might be some, certainly some monks and nuns and hermits and ones in all kinds of different religions who keep that intact. I have to talk about something here for a moment that I feel is abominable to the kingdom of heaven. You know, I've read of groups that are pretty esoteric, pretty hidden, like certain Essene groups and certain monastic orders and certain isolated religions that would even go as so far to stimulate their sexuality, as if by stimulating their sexuality, it somehow or another sent that energy force, that kundalini, into the brain and caused more capacity for enlightenment or development. That's a counterfeit of the truth. It is true that as you restrict yourself and separate from sensuality and sexuality, and as you close that door totally, and those hormones stop acting in your vehicle, and even when they act, you don't hear them, you don't give in to them in the least. It is true that when you move into a greater capacity for higher knowledge and higher understanding and more muscle and more strength to deal with these things in other ways than sexuality and sensuality. But the counterfeit of that is to, in some sort of ridiculous way, stimulate sensuality or sexuality for some kind of spiritual trip that is hideous to our Father's kingdom. That's a perversion of the way to control was designed to come. I hate to, but I must address that directly. That is not the truth. Even though certainly T and I investigated it seriously. We studied it as we studied everything else during the period of our awakening, and it was made so clear to us that it was not of our Father's kingdom. How did they study it? How did this gay man and this woman, I don't know her sexuality, how did they study this so in depth to be totally sure that, yeah, this isn't what God wants? Okay. Now, sensuality, I think the next place to begin on this probably is to discuss love, because Satan has humans confuse love with sexuality. And love in our Father's house has no relationship with sexuality. One illustration that was given to us to think about was, if you're from my Father's house, you cannot imagine yourself in a position of being in the act of sexuality in full, broad daylight. And while in the act, look up to your Heavenly Father and say, I know that I'm only expressing your love. I don't know, that really made me think of those cults where they talk about, oh yeah, God told me that I have to have sex with you, you underage individual. I mean, I'm glad that at least Heaven's Gate was not doing that. When you become a candidate for our Father's kingdom, in a sense, our Father then begins to get your eyes focused on his kingdom and says, I'm a jealous God. For a period of time, you might have thought you loved me more than you loved those other things. But if you're going to get into my house, you have to love only me. You can't love anything else out there. You love only me. I don't have sex, he says. I'm not a sexual creature. I don't even have the plumbing for it. We don't do that kind of thing. Therefore, it's obviously not an expression of love as far as I'm concerned. Well, again, just like every other Christian, God sounds like an abusive partner. For a while in our classroom, after T first left her vehicle, and I was still trying to get out of the shock of it and help the students through the shock of it, if I was gone from them for a period of time and I returned, I would hug them and try to show affection for them. And after a while, I began to feel, this is inappropriate. We need to get past this. This is less than right. It may not have done any harm for a period of time, but it's inappropriate. The Band-Aid might have worked. We don't need the Band-Aid any longer. Wow, again, just like every other Christian, this thing that isn't bad is actually sin. Okay. That doesn't mean that we don't love each other. We do love each other if our Father desires for us to love each other, and to that degree, that is right from His eyes for us to love each other. But we don't love each other certainly in a physical nature where we need to touch, or we need to hold hands, or we need to hug, or we need to kiss. We don't need those things, and it's certainly safer to avoid them during this more advanced position in overcoming, because in some we might innocently re-trigger something. And if they were permitted to engage in touching or hugging or even kissing on the cheek, it would re-engage something that they worked very hard to overcome. So we certainly don't want to re-engage an old addiction. And withdrawing from the drug of sensuality and sexuality is as difficult a withdrawal, if not more difficult, than any other withdrawal. It's tough, and Satan keeps sending it back again and again and again to test you. Because those hormones keep being stimulated, even by things you might consume, by a commercial that you might see on television. I mean, this day and time, from toothpaste to trousers, everything is done based on the sexual appeal of something. There's hardly a commercial on TV that isn't based on sexual appeal. So, sensuality has so many aspects to it. But remember, since it's not a behavior that even exists in our Father's kingdom, then to someone who's trying to get from here to there, it's something that we have to go through the withdrawal of. We have to overcome, we have to rise above, we have to have in control, and we have to have help having it in control. We don't need to fall off the wagon. We learn to not even listen to it. We learn to quickly turn our head if a magazine catches our eye in the supermarket that has pictures that would have triggered the vehicle in a previous time. Then we quickly don't see it. If a television show or a movie has a moment of sensuality, it's almost as if a movie can hardly hit the marketplace if it doesn't have a certain amount of scenes in it of sensuality or sexuality. And if you've really advanced in the process of overcoming, you're very sensitive to those vibrations and you're very uncomfortable with those vibrations. You have to quickly just turn away. You don't need to stand up and wave a flag or shout at the audience and say, "Oh, turn that film off." But you certainly need to have control of your eyes, not let the vehicle see it, and not even let it play internally in your head. Has anybody else done that back when they were religious? That there would be something that was presented, a movie or at something, especially in your teen years. And I just remember being so caught in my indoctrination that I would leave. I would get up and I would just leave these places just as a way to say, oh, I don't partake in this. Just I got up and left. When Jesus said, when someone looks upon someone lustfully, they've committed the act. That meant there's no difference. So if we do the act in our head, we certainly haven't overcome the act. This is one step. We're not doing the act physically, but that's just one step. Another step is not even permitting those thoughts, those images to come into our head. So it's a big item. It's a major item. It has many, many facets and many lessons. Now, I've mentioned things like the movies and magazines and the fact that we don't just go where we want to go when we want to go. You could think that we live a pretty sterile existence, but it's only as sterile as we like it. I don't mean for you to misunderstand that. We view a lot of television. We like to go to the movies. We have a variety in things that we consume. We have a lot of times when we sit and have lessons and meetings, even when we're broken into separate groups in different places. We have all kinds of things given to us that serve our vehicle for our lessons. It's true that if we had to deal with a lot of restlessness, then we have to get control of that. We have to read books to read, not only Bibles, but all kinds of books to read, just about everything you can think of. But certainly not books that would trigger or turn on old weaknesses that we're working so hard to overcome, even though some of the books might have some pages in it that we might skip over. That is the same as when it different ones in the class might climb in a vehicle or a car and go to the movie. They know that they can see that movie and they can turn off a scene. But they also do censor the movie to a degree if the movie has too much of that in. They consider it off their list. They don't want to see it. It's not worth it to them. Oh, while I'm thinking about a movie, I have to bring up one that the class recently saw, the movie Hook, and it was interesting. I mean, of course, Hook represents evil or Satan, and Peter Pan represents the good guy. When Hook had Peter's rightful son in his presence, he wanted really to see if he couldn't get Peter's children to see him as a father and to imitate him. He didn't have much success with Peter's daughter. She couldn't quite stop doing anything but missing Peter. But because the son didn't really understand much about Peter as his father, the son for a while bought into Hook because Hook gave him so much attention and elevated him so, as does Satan. He gives you a lot of attention. He elevates you so, and he even lets you imitate him. He can give you all kinds of success and authority and power and things of this world. But as soon as Peter came back in the picture, and Peter's son really began to see Peter for who he was, the son apologized to his father and said, "I'm yours. Hook is not my father." And he quickly realized how much he had gone astray. And of course, Peter felt guilty, because Peter felt like he really hadn't let his son know him. So does Jesus feel guilty? He's saying God feels guilty because he set up a really, really bizarre system that really just sets us up for failure? That what his son knew of him wasn't enough to win him. So Peter certainly understood how his son could go for Hook. Well, I'm sorry, I had to bring that illustration up. It was a good one. And the movie had a lot of good parallel lessons in it as far as conflict between good and evil are concerned. What's next on our list? Were there any particulars about sensuality that you were going to bring up? Well, yes. Would you want to say something about costume and jewelry? About costume, really? Right now? Okay. Costume and jewelry. Okay, this gets into an area where some of you can say, oh, those who are with this representative or with this group or with this cult seem to have an identity. We have a kind of identity that is trying not to have another kind of identity. Since we're moving into a world that is genderless, then we try not to be associated with the gender of our vehicles. Females are not trying to look like males. Males are not trying to look like females. They're trying to be neither. They're trying to be both, in the purest sense, but not in the human sense. So what do? An aspect of human female consciousness would be to use a certain amount of makeup, tend to the hair, go to a beauty parlor, spend time on the rollers, earrings, jewelry, tight waist, short skirt. That is an aspect of human female consciousness, you guys. Did Doe know anything about rich men in the past? The ones who were all dolled up with all kinds of frilly clothes and beautiful hair, beautiful wigs, beautiful jewelry, and beautiful makeup? In the same way, the male consciousness would be to wear tight blue jeans, tight belt, tight shirt, cowboy boots, and be Mr. Macho or whatever it is. Doe, you are still a gay man. His idea, like his ideal idea of the male consciousness is a cowboy wearing all the tightest clothes he can and being as macho as he can. Wow. We are trying to have no masculine characteristics, no feminine characteristics, but in a sense still sensitive and soft, but neither male nor female, genderless. So it is true that the members of this class cut their hair in a way that's easiest to care for. The class members cut each other's hair so they don't have to go to the human beauty parlor. They can have their own barbershop wherever they are. Some are assigned the task of barbering because they do less butchering in the process than others. That's a friendly way to put it. Even though whenever I'm with them, I question, who did that haircut? Who did so-and-so's hair? The neck's not tapered very well. But they do have a haircut that is pretty much neither male nor female, and one that they can handle and is easy to care for. They can wash their hair every day. It's clean, it's off their neck, they don't have to give it any attention, and it doesn't attract any attention out here in the world. As far as the clothing they wear pretty much unisex type clothes that certainly aren't tight-fitting, and they wear a loose shirt. Sometimes the shirt is bought in a store in a department that sells items for both male and female. And sometimes, whether you go into Marshall's or Ross's or some of the discount stores, you might find the same shirt in the women's department that you'd find in the men's department. The only thing that's changed is their sizes, but they want loose-fitting things that do not accentuate the waist or the hips or any shape of the vehicle. They don't need to color themselves. They don't need lipstick or rouge. They try to stay clean and neat and well taken care of and try not to vibrate attracting anyone, but they also don't want to vibrate repelling anyone. They just want to be neutral. They just want to be objective. they try to control that vibration. And so, certainly, it affects the items of jewelry, makeup, haircuts, clothing. And as hard as they try to kind of be unidentified in that way, whenever they go someplace and they go back to that place again, for example, if a partnership goes into a market and then another partnership goes into the same market, inevitably, if they go to the same checkout counter, the person says, "Well, I just saw you here yesterday," even though they weren't the same ones at all. It was someone else in the classroom. Their vibration seems to be so different from the humans that they're mistaken for each other frequently. We try so hard not to have clothes that look alike, and in spite of our efforts, the class members all seem to look alike in the eyes of others. So we try to work hard at not doing that, or at least knowing that the possibility exists. I mean, why would they care? So what? You don't need to identify yourself, right? And you're just at the grocery store. Who cares if you're confused for one of four in this example? But you have to examine, you have to say, do I need to cling to my femininity? Do I need to cling to my masculinity? Because if you do, then you're not ready to make this transition from the human kingdom into our Father's kingdom. If you go back and read your scriptures, you'll find that there is no marrying, there is no male nor female. So it is a genderless kingdom. I'm glad we've had the chance to get started a little bit at some of the aspects of overcoming. We've given you a lot to think about. You know, as I think about our previous session, as I go over it in my head, I know that we weeded out quite a few who watched that session, and of those who watched this session, we'll probably weed out quite a few more. And we keep wondering, where's it going to end? Will we weed them out so that no one responds? And if that happens, if we're doing the will of our Father, then that's all that matters to us. We're not getting any points on how many might listen to us and follow us. We only want to do what is instruction from our Father's kingdom. Oh, I see those cards. The last one said 10 seconds, and now this one says 5. We'll see you in our next session, and we're glad that we're here. Well, this was definitely an interesting one. Well, that was certainly an interesting one. I think this one was a lot more coherent to some extent. I did have some issues with the idea that, oh, you have these urges mentioned in a previous session. Well, I mean, no, it's the demons that are coming and taking over your body. They have those urges. And then literally a paragraph later, well, actually, maybe you also have these urges too. And it does seem a little petty in a way that imagine this discarnate soul is going into your body to play the piano well. Why would it still be an alcoholic? It doesn't have a physical body that could thirst for the alcohol anyway. I don't know. So that part I think didn't make much sense, but otherwise I think this whole session transcript was a lot easier of a read compared to the other ones. But maybe I'm actually just getting used to reading this, and if I am, then perhaps I'm one of the ones that has been chosen to be receptive to this information. Anyway, I would love to hear what you guys think about it. And if you guys want to join me for other videos, like I mentioned, I'm doing a reading of one of the books that was actually referenced in our Heaven's Gate book. So I bought that book and I'm doing a reading of it. For the public channel, I will talk about the book after we're finished, but for the members, we're reading through the book together. So that'll be a good time. If you would like to have access to some other videos, early access to these regular videos that I post, and access to our cult member meetup, which is our live stream. We have one once a month at the end of the month, and we just have a good time. I always plan to be there for 2 hours, and it always ends up being 6 hours, and it's just a fun time watching things like Superbook or Young Elder, just a bunch of different fringe religious beliefs that are, somewhat enjoyable and, just for fun. Life's too stressful anyway, and I'd love to see you there. We could just hang out and have a good time. If you would like to join the Lemon Cult, you can do so on Patreon, or you can do so here on YouTube as a member. If you prefer Patreon, the link is in the description below, and you can also find a link to our Discord. You can just join the Discord, have a good time, but if you do become a member, you can also let me know through the Discord, and you can have access to our hidden cult member channel in our Discord. Anyway, with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining me. If you're not really sure what you want to post in the comments section, but you do want to appease the almighty algorithm, how about posting a picture of an alien and cherry emojis? Sounds good. That being said, as always, thanks for listening.
Join us on a spaceship, leave this world behind. Make sure you are ready, make sure you say goodbye. We'll see you